Looks like franchise firsts are back on the menu. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where for the first time in franchise history, the Seattle Kraken have won 4 consecutive games, defeating the Pittsburgh Penguins 3-2 in Pittsburgh. And also with the win, have another franchise first, as for the first time in franchise history, they are over regular 500, having won more games than they've lost on a season. Of course, now improving their record to 7-4-2. No lineup changes in this one for the Kraken, which unfortunately for the second straight game does mean no Jared McCann, still day-to-day with an injury, but it does mean more Shane Wright. Although we got less Shane Wright than we got against the Wild, but still he gets over 8 minutes of ice time, and in that time did look probably more comfortable than he's looked at all this season. Just one game after another looking better and more comfortable in NHL action. I'm sure the more regular playing time is also helping, which, who could have guessed that would work. As for the rest of the team, as we do now get into the game, just as the case was a week ago when these two teams met for the first time this season in Seattle, the score is still 0-0 after 1, which isn't to say that each team didn't have their chances to get on the board in the first period, and in fact, if I had to be honest, the Seattle defense certainly didn't look the sharpest that it has during this winning streak. I mean, better than, again, that second period that we've already talked about in Calgary, but not nearly as good as we saw in Minnesota or the first and third in Calgary, or really even in the other game at home against the Penguins. I mean, I guess to be fair, it was still certainly a much better defensively played game by the Kraken than we saw at this point last season, but again, not quite as good as we've seen over these last few games. That being said, it wasn't necessarily the defense of the Kraken that got tested early on, as it was their penalty kill that got tested within the first few minutes. At least on the bright side, it is a red-hot Kraken penalty kill that has really gotten things turned around in a big way since that well-documented rough start to the season that eventually saw them in 31st in the league. Now having killed off 8 penalties consecutively in a row, going back to that first Pittsburgh game in Seattle. And of course, they just continue to add on to that here with kill number 9, and then a few minutes later, kill number 10 in a row, both within the first half of the first period. The first kill was certainly the better of the two, as I'm not even sure they allowed a shot on goal, maybe one. The second kill, they do allow a couple more shots on goal. Of course, Jones is able to make the saves, but the big problem here is that while they are able to kill off, again, a now 10th penalty in a row, it does allow the Penguins to start to gain momentum, which they really carry throughout almost the rest of the first period, right up until Seattle does eventually, in the last couple minutes of the first, get their first power play of the game. A power play that gets a couple of shots of its own, but no particularly dangerous scoring chances. A power play for the Kraken that honestly seems like it's in a bit of a slump at the moment, outside of course, the Wimberg back goal from a game ago. But even with that, again, just like the defense, it does still look a lot better than what we saw last year. The second period does get off to a much more back and forth start as the two teams trade possession of the puck and going up and down the ice from one end to the other, getting chances at either end of the ice. Still some decently played defense. It wasn't like there was odd man rushes galore one way and the other, and grade A chance after grade A chance or anything like that. It was just kind of a good hockey game. Really, for kind of most of the rest of the game, it was pretty evenly played at either end. Unfortunately, it is the Penguins, though, that end up breaking the ice and getting on the board first. As one of their presses down at the Kraken end, they barely miss Crosby as he's on the far side of the net, and it would have been a tip-in if they could have just hit his stick as he was standing right on the back door. However, although the Kraken survived that opportunity, as the puck gets out of the zone, the Penguins get back control of it in the neutral zone, and right back into the offensive end, Gensel carries it in, drops it back for Crosby, who fires off a one-timer from right in the slot, and finds the back of the net. And of course, it's Crosby who gets the Penguins on the board first. For the Kraken, it might have been a good idea not to give one of the best players, honestly, ever, that much space twice in a row to try and score with. Of course, that being said, he is one of the best players ever for a reason, and those guys tend to create space for themselves. Still, whatever happened, it does end with that Pittsburgh lead. The good news, though, is that it's a lead for the Penguins that would not last very long at all, as just about 2 minutes later, Schwartz carries the puck along the boards down into the offensive zone with actually a good amount of space around him, but opts to not press towards the net to try and get a shot off, instead looking around for someone to pass to. Eventually finding Beniers coming in behind him, but by the time the puck gets to Beniers, he also doesn't have much of a shot. He then passes it off to Eberle, who is right out in front of the net. The pass is kind of at Eberle's feet, so he has to kick it to his stick, take a shot, and it's early season Eberle, and even though he's got the one goal, he of course gets absolutely robbed by Jari in net. Okay, so they weren't quite able to respond quickly to that Pittsburgh goal, but at least they got a good chance off on net, forced Jarry to make a nice save, and now they'll at least get a chance to have a face-off in the offensive end, which, granted, face-offs haven't been necessarily something the Kraken have excelled at so far this season, and once again in this game, the Penguins definitely beat them at the face-off circle. But they do end up winning this face-off. It's Gord that wins it. The puck just kind of dribbles back to Dunn, and he just skates up to it, fires off a shot, and it's into the back of the net to tie up the game. So, after all, the Kraken do respond pretty quickly to the Pittsburgh goal. It comes off of a one face-off, so once again, that's why this is an important thing for the Kraken to work on. And the Kraken have tied it up at 1 from Vince Dunn. And of course, now that over the last couple of minutes, the two teams have traded goals, up next, just a couple minutes later, they decide to trade power plays, and it's the Penguins who are going to get the first crack at it. Fortunately for the Kraken, though, it's actually Seattle who gets the better scoring chance on this Pens power play. It starts in the defensive end where Malkin has the puck. Tanev just kind of pushes him over, and while he's falling to the ice, he is able to get his stick around the puck and just kind of slingshot it backwards towards the blue line, where Letang makes a diving effort to keep it in the zone. However, it ends up bouncing off of Letang as he also goes to the ice, leaving it wide open for Geeky to take and go straight down on a what could have been 2-on-1, but Tanev's a little bit behind him, so Geeky just goes for the breakaway himself. But Jarry does end up making the save, which honestly, it kind of felt like this one was going in considering it was Geeky and the run that he's been on with goals. He still found a way to get on the board a couple of times later anyway. And as far as these two power plays are concerned for the Penguins and then Kraken, both are killed off successfully, and both also had shorthanded chances as the Penguins get one of their own, not quite as good of a chance as Geeky had, but still not a great power play from the Kraken, and we do get to the end of 2 with the score now tied at 1. So then as we start the third, again, plays pretty back and forth, but maybe edging a little bit towards the Penguins, as you can definitely tell coming into this third period with them being on a 6-game losing streak and playing at home. There's some urgency there to make something happen to try to win this game. Meanwhile, for the Kraken, it's a little bit more of a reserved, trying to not make defensive mistakes and take advantage of what you're given type of situation. And eventually, that leads them to their third power play of the game. The Kraken, that is. It does also actually end up being Crosby who gets called here and headed to the box for the Penguins on an interference call on Beniers, which he was not particularly happy either on his way to or out of the box about this penalty, though you can also take that with a grain of salt. Crosby's never particularly happy about having penalties called on him. Still, it doesn't really end up mattering as this Kraken power play doesn't go much of anywhere for a third time. Again, the best of the 3 Kraken power plays in this game being the one at the end of the first period. Even that one, though, was not particularly dangerous. Which, now that both of these penalty kills go 3 for 3 in this game, is not what you would have expected coming into it, with them being 28th and 29th ranked coming into it. The Penguins being ranked 29th and the Kraken 28th, with that run they've had over the last few games, bringing them up from the cellar. Although, I said it didn't really end up mattering that the Kraken got this power play because it didn't really go much of anywhere, but as the power play is coming to an end, in the last couple of seconds, the Kraken are able to get the puck back into the offensive zone, and then as Crosby's exiting the box, Geeky with it down near the corner along the boards, fires off a pass into the slot where Tanev is standing. Tanev puts his shin out, it goes off of his shin right to Gord, and Gord roofs it into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 2-1 lead. It's, of course, a bit of a fortunate bounce, as your shin isn't necessarily the part that you have the most control over where the puck goes off of it, but the Kraken will take the bounce, and they'll happily take the lead here midway through the third period. However, unfortunately, this time it's Pittsburgh's chance to get the relatively, anyway, quick response goal to the Kraken taking the lead, really showing again some urgency offensively to get the puck into the offensive zone and try to make something happen to at least get this game to overtime, where, granted, with their talent, they have a decent chance of winning it 3-on-3. And it's Gensel down in the corner, pretty much perpendicular to the goal, right along that red goal line. He just shoots the puck off at the net without really an angle to score from. He's trying to get it to, I think it was Rust out in front of the net, but it never even ends up getting to Rust, as unfortunately Beniers does get a stick on it trying to intercept the pass before it can get to Rust in front of the net. And while he's successfully able to do that, it goes off Beniers' stick, through Jones' armpit, and into the back of the net to tie the game at 2. And for Beniers, who honestly didn't have a particularly great game, he didn't necessarily have a bad game either, probably one of the worst games of his career so far. Again, not really a bad game, and it was one of the worst, so that's saying something about how his career's been going. Still, he knew this one right away was on him, as he immediately looks straight to the sky in exasperation, and he knows that, well, as Steve Dingle would say, yeah, that's a dang it. Following this unfortunate bounce for Beniers and the Kraken, who, to be fair, have had some pretty fortunate bounces go their way over the last couple of games, still, this one ties up the score in the opponent's favor late in the third. The next couple of minutes of this game, it has to be said, are some of the most exciting minutes of hockey that I've seen watching the Kraken now for the last year and a half. And not because it was all Kraken pressure and all Kraken in the offensive end, or they put up a couple of points or something like that. It was pretty evenly played hockey. It was just high flying up and down the ice, one end to the other. Both teams getting pretty good chances, and not because of terrible defense and odd man breaks or anything like that. It was just good hockey at both ends. And it certainly helps that it finishes with the Kraken taking the lead as they get into the offensive zone once again. The puck is down around behind the net, gets out into the corner, where Geekie puts it down directly behind the net for Gord, and Gord eventually finds Tanev right in front of the net, right where Gord actually scored his goal from, and Tanev roofs it just like Gord did earlier, once again to take the lead, and of course, it's Turbo in the place that he used to call home, giving the Kraken the late third period lead, making it 3-2. And once again, of course, it's that same group of three guys who gave the Kraken the lead 2-1 earlier on, just in a slightly different order. This time it's Gord passing it to Tanev rather than the other way around, but Geekie starting it both times. So Geekie ends with 2 assists. Gord gets, 2 assists because he won the faceoff on the first goal to Dunn, and also the goal there in the middle. And Tanev with a goal, the game-winning goal, and an assist as well. Of course, as we know, the Kraken do end up hanging on to that 3-2 lead, as Jari tried to get out of the net a few times and was able to a couple of times, just not for, I think, as extended a period of time as the Penguins would have liked to have 6-on-5. Wennberg did barely miss the empty net at one point. Still, the Kraken hang on to win this one 3-2. Jones, by the way, I didn't really talk about him too much in this, but was fantastic all night long for the Kraken. Had, again, a number of pretty good saves, especially considering that, as I mentioned at the beginning, the defense wasn't quite as solid in front of him as it has been in the last couple of games for the Kraken, second period in Calgary aside. And actually, one of those saves for Jones does end up coming here in these last couple of minutes after the Kraken got that third goal from Tanev. It's one where the Penguins tried to almost emulate the same play the Kraken just scored on, getting it from out behind the net, out in front, where, again, I think it was Rust, I don't know, you'll see on the screenshot, who gets the shot off. It ends up going off of Jones' shoulders. He kind of shrugs up, just clearing the net and keeping the puck out of it to keep the Kraken in the lead there at the end. And of course, we, as I already said, won 3-2. And again, like we said in the beginning, for the Kraken, their 4th win in a row, getting them over true 500 for the first time in franchise history, and also going 3 for 3 on this road trip. Plus, with this win, I think I can safely say being a pretty good full 60-minute win, really the first 2 games of those that they've strung together this season. Yes, again, they have now won 4 in a row, but I think the Calgary one, I don't think we can say that was a full 60-minute game, even if they did end up coming back to win that one. Either way, though, still some very fun and exciting hockey being played here by the Kraken early on in the season, and I think it's safe to say, especially for anybody who watched the Kraken last year extensively, a team that looks very different from the one that we saw last year. Hopefully they can continue this as they now end this road trip 3-0 and come back home for what I'm pretty sure is the longest homestand they have on the season. They'll get a couple days rest before taking on another struggling team in the Nashville Predators, and then another couple days rest after that. But of course, before we move on to the homestand, we still have to go over the 3 stars in this game. And the first one is gotta be Yanni Gourde, again with the 3 points in this game that we already talked about, the assists on the first and third goal, and of course his second goal of the season, getting that pass off of Tanev's shin and putting it in to give the Kraken, at the time, the lead midway through the third. And my second star for the Kraken in this one, another big fan favorite, it's gotta be Turbo, not only getting the game-winning goal, but also doing it in his return to the place he was taken from in the expansion draft. Of course, not getting to play there last year because he was out with his injury. So, big game for him, and he did admit that it did feel good to get that game winner in his return to Pittsburgh. And then my third Kraken star of this one, as will probably be the case with most games that the Kraken win, there's any number of guys, or at least a fair few, that you could make a good argument for getting this third star. Certainly, Morgan Geekie deserves some mention with his 2 assists in this game. And I probably should give it to him, right? I mean, I can't just keep giving stars to Jones. I mean, yeah, I absolutely can, and he's absolutely deserving once again. Stopping 35 of 37 shots. I mean, really stops 35 of 36 shots taken on him by Penguins. I mean, sorry, Beniers, but the truth is the truth, and that's going to happen to anybody over the course of a long career like Beniers is about to have. Still, though, for Jones, another fantastic night. Again, we've mentioned a couple of times the defense wasn't quite as solid, and Jones made some more spectacular saves. And that era Jones just keeps coming through for the Kraken, finally getting the goaltending that we have been kind of waiting for from the beginning. Of course, though, we're still very much hoping that Grubauer can get back sooner rather than later and start his run like Jones is on now. But that certainly isn't going to stop us from enjoying the show that Jones has been putting on over these last few games, and hopefully will continue to do in this upcoming homestand. As for now, though, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section about this game, the road trip, and maybe this winning streak in general. What we look forward to coming up on this homestand. Obviously, we'd love to see McCann back and Grubauer at some point again. And until that homestand gets going, without really anything else that I can think of, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, at home against the Predators, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!